Good morning. Thank you to everyone. I'm looking to see how many participants we have. It looks like we have about 57 of our parents joining us this morning, and we'll be repeating this session again at 6 p.m. So if you know someone or your spouse or a family member, neighbor would like to pop in, we'll have the same session tonight at 6 p.m. So as I mentioned, I'm Dr. Gabrielle Maffei, very proud superintendent, my 11th year of serving you in Garden Grove Unified School District, and Dr. Stephanie Hepplin, who will be speaking in a little bit later, who oversees our secondary schools. Please advance slide. So our agenda for this morning, for this brief time that we have together, is to have a little bit of understanding about secondary success. Some of you, this is your first child who will be going into high school. Others have older children. I myself, my husband and I have a 35-year-old and a 28-year-old, and I've been through this. And I can tell you, it seems like just yesterday, but there were so many learning experiences for me when my children went into high school. Even at the time when my son was in high school, I was a principal, and when my daughter was in high school, I was an assistant superintendent, but I still was learning things, even in my role in education. And so we are this morning wanted to talk to you about some of the things we've seen, and there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions as well. And so you can ask the questions, you can put them in the chat, and then at the end of the presentation, any question we haven't gotten to or answered in the course of the chat, we will take the opportunity to do so. So we're going to start out understanding a little bit about the district goals and how that fits in with our lifelong success and our sense of belonging. Then Dr. Hefflin's going to give you a brief orientation to high school life. As you probably already know, your children who are in 8th grade are going to be visiting the high schools next week. She's going to give you a little preview of that and what is the important information for you to know. And then I'll close out by talking a little bit about what can those 8th graders, or some of you might even have younger children, do now to prepare in terms of scholarly habits and motivation. And as I mentioned, you're welcome to put any questions in the chat, but you might want to wait and hear the content and see after you hear everything, what questions do you still have? Next slide, please. To begin with, I'm sure you've seen this. This is the Garden Grove Way. So these are our 3 important district goals, our mission and our vision, and then the 3 goals to help us meet those mission and vision. The first goal is academic skills, which is inclusive of the students learning the academic content. Also, the majority of our students come from a home in which English isn't the primary language. And so we want them to be bilingual and biliterate in both languages, English and their home language. And then, of course, those scholarly habits, learning how to be a scholar. As you know from your children growing up, being able to read well doesn't mean you want to spend time reading every day, or being able to do math well doesn't mean that you know how to organize your notes. With those academic skills, equally important in goal 2 are those personal skills. And those are 3 pieces, and we're going to touch upon some of them today as well. Motivation, the extent to which students have that drive and determination to do well. Well-being, how they feel about themselves as people. And then climate and culture, what we do as a school to help them to have that sense of belonging. If students have goal 1, academic skills, plus goal 2, personal skills, we believe, and we've seen in action, that it will lead to lifelong success. Next slide, please. So you've, I'm sure, seen the banners that adorn our schools on the outside of all of our elementary, intermediate, and high schools, as well as throughout the 5 cities that we serve. And it's exciting to drive down the street. And as I'm driving down, I know many of the students, I'm like, oh, there's Pauline, there's Sebastian, there's Angelica, and I can see the names of the students. You might also be wondering, how does my child get a banner when they graduate from high school? It is based on their grade point average, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that later. But one of the things that we know is that these students who go on to college, and eventually, of course, the goal being career success, is that they do well in high school. They earn good grades, they're active participants in the high school process. And these lucky parents whose children have banners, and each year of our graduating class of seniors, there are about 250 of them. After 2 years of it being displayed, we actually call those parents, and you can take that banner home and you can keep it in your home. In fact, I've been to a few homes of some of our alumni, and I've seen the banner up on the wall. If my children had had a banner, it'd be up in my house as well. They just never got a banner. Next slide, please. So when we think as parents, so my son is 35, he's a teacher. My daughter, he lives in the local area. My daughter is 28. She is a psychotherapist. She lives in New York. And then my husband and I also have an 8-year-old who was a special bonus child. Long story, but who's profoundly disabled and medically fragile. So he has a different pathway, but as parents, of course, what we want for each of our children is we want our children to have success in the best way that they can realize it. And for the majority of the students in our district, that success is going to be living on their own, having their own academic life in Garden Grove Unified School District and going on to college and career and having families of their own. Next slide. So when we think of the keys to success for our children, I know I'm like many of your children, first generation. So my mom came from Ciudad Juárez, Mexico, and she and my dad met here and then had 6 of us kids. And my mom used to say, in addition to comportate bien, behave yourself, she would also say, you need to study real well, kids, because you have all the opportunities for the American dream in the United States. And that's what they wanted for us. And that's what I know all of our parents want for our children. So when we think about our children growing up someday, my son's 35, but it seems like he was just 10 years old the other day. We think about, as adults, having a career, a job you love, and that pays you well so you can have the lifestyle you want. They're going to have their own family someday. They're going to have outside interests and hobbies. And very importantly, they're going to have their own personal and mental health. So wellness physically and also strong mental health. Next slide, please. One of the things we know about careers for the children that are in high school, elementary, and intermediate right now is that, and this chart is a little hard to read, it's kind of like an eye chart, but what it shows you, a bar graph, is when students have less education after high school, they have lower pay. And on the far right-hand side, the more education, a college degree, advanced degrees, the higher pay. Now, income is not the only thing that matters, but we want our children to do well enough so they can live on their own and they can have their own homes and their own cars and be able to do their own things when they're adults. We also know that the research shows that 85% of the students in high school now and the students to come in high school, 85% of the high-paying careers require a college degree, a university degree. Next slide. So this is a slide that I show to 6th graders when I do a 6th grade assembly at the different elementary schools, because I ask them, what's going to happen to you when you turn 18? And they say, we're going to be adults. So what happens when you become an adult? And they have all kinds of funny things that they say when they're 12. One thing they say is, our parents could kick us out of the house. I'm like, well, don't worry about it. They probably won't kick you out of the house, but you are going to be an adult and you are going to be independent. And eventually you're going to have your own home and eventually you're going to have your own family. And they understand that, but they don't always understand what can get them to be a successful adult. So we talk about the following things. We talk about the fact that when they're adults, most people have a career, and a career has 2 parts of it, something they love to do and something that pays them well so that they can provide for themselves and their families. Your children who are in 8th grade or in other grade levels, they're not having to think about where their food comes from, where their clothes come from, who pays the bills in the house, because their parents do it all for them. But they need to start thinking, someday in the future, I'm going to have to do that. How do I prepare myself? So then working backwards, I tell them to have a successful career, 85% of the high-paying jobs that they will be able to pursue when they are adults will require a college degree. And that's what we focus. It doesn't mean that college is the only way. We have many other pathways that students can take, but we do know that unless they're going into a skilled trade, so that would be a 4 to 6 year program of being an electrician or a welder or an HVAC technician, and those require almost the equivalent amount of time to a college degree. Those are great skilled trades. Or if they're going to go in the military, however, if you go into the military and you already have a bachelor's degree, you go in at a higher level, you go in as an officer. But there's many things they can do. Some may choose to stay home with the children at first, at 1 or 2 of the spouses, and they might not work right away. But we do know that all of our students in preparing to be adults need to think about what careers. They don't have to decide on the career now, but they need to know that in the future, they'll want to have a career, and they want to have a career that they enjoy doing. I love being a superintendent. I started as a teacher, and that pays them well enough so they can have the lifestyle that they want to have as adults. So then we walk backwards again and we say, well, how do you get a college degree? And a lot of students, and even in 8th grade, but also in elementary school, so K-8, they don't realize that to get into college, you have to be accepted into college. They're used to, I go to elementary, that's where I live. Then my next intermediate school is the school based on where I live. And then I go to high school. I show up to Bolsa Grande, or I show up to Santiago, or I show up to Pacifica based on the area I live in. At the high school, intermediate, and elementary, they never say, well, you better take a test first to see if you can get in, or let me see what your grades are. They're automatically accepted because it's a free public education for students from TK all the way to 12th grade. That all changes when it comes time to college. And we really do a lot of training and support for your children, and talk to them about this when they get home, is that they need to understand they need to get good grades, have good behavior and good attendance in high school to be accepted into college. College is very competitive now. I'm 56 years old, and it's more competitive now than it was when I was younger. And I had to go to community college. I wasn't even given the right classes back in my day. But for our students, they need to know that the grades will be what gets them into college. And if they want to do well in high school, they need to get into, and sorry, that little picture, cut it off. It should say into the right classes and activities, which means they need to start preparing now and thinking now. I talk to sixth graders, so not even eighth graders. I talk to sixth graders all the time. And I say, you're 12, you're 2/3 of the way to be an adult. The first 6 years, you're a baby all the way through kindergarten. Then you have first through sixth grade. Then the 6 years of secondary school, 7th and 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, go by so fast, and they have to start preparing now. Next slide. So one of the things as a parent that I wanted to share with you before we talk to you a little bit more about the details of high school is that there's some research that shows that students in high school, in particular, this is most important in high school, that have a sense of belonging, that have a sense of being a valued member of their school community, do better in goal 1, academics, and better in goal 2, personal skills. Next slide. So a sense of belonging is something that we want students to acquire, and it's something that's very important as they get older. If you think of your child when they went to preschool or kindergarten or TK, first grade, they were excited about everything. They had so many friends. Sometimes there was a little drama, but not that much. Then they get into upper elementary. There's a little bit more drama. They're a little more worried. Then they go into puberty, and they're in 7th and 8th grade. And now the girl that was my friend or the boy that was my friend isn't my friend anymore. There's social media. There's so many challenges that when they get to high school, it can be a very challenging time if they're not prepared. And some of the ways that they can be prepared is to find a sense of belonging. You're going to hear more about that from me as well as Dr. Halfman. So belonging gives the confidence for students to believe in themselves. It gives them the persistence to continue on. When they have a sense of belonging, the way they look at challenges is different. If they feel they belong, when something is hard, they're like, that's okay, I can work harder and I'll get it. If they don't feel a sense of belonging, then when they don't do well, I wasn't cut out to do well in school. I'm no good at math. And we, even as adults, have that feeling, right? If you go into a setting, when I go to the South Coast Plaza with all the rich people, I'm like, oh, I didn't grow up rich, I grew up very poor. So I'm like, I don't really feel like I belong. So I'm always very cautious of what I do. And I don't feel that sense of comfort. We want all of our students to feel a strong sense of belonging. And in high school is where that becomes so important. Next slide. So what do students say a sense of belonging is in school? Belonging is being accepted, it's fitting in. It means that people care about you and what happens to you. And there's definite differences of students who start high school feeling like they belong and students who don't. Next slide. So this, you'll have to click again because it's like a graphic and it has a few parts. There you go. So this would be a student who feels a sense of belonging is going to go through a cycle where they kind of buoy or reinforce themselves. So the first thing is they start with the feeling, I belong here. I'm going to have challenges, but that's okay. The student goes through, engages with academics. They're perceived as being motivated by their teachers and the staff at the school. The teachers then, because the students seem motivated, want to provide them with additional opportunities, and the student's academic performance increases. Next slide. Contrast that with a student who feels, I don't belong here. I don't have friends, or people don't like me, or I don't fit in. I'm not in a sport. I'm not in VAPA. I'm not in a club. I don't have people who know me. Because remember, parents, just being in a class, sitting in a class is not going to give you that sense of belonging. It's like if you're in the grocery store, you're not going to feel a sense of belonging unless you see someone you know and you have some common interests. So when students don't feel like they belong, that causes a different thing on the part of students. They kind of withdraw, they get quiet, they don't engage. Then what do the adults think? Oh, they're not motivated or they're not as engaged. And so the adults don't always provide those extra opportunities because they think the child doesn't care. And then the performance goes down. So this is how goal 1 and goal 2 interact with each other. Next slide. So when our children are preparing to go to high school, this is a critical time for us to prepare them with the type of thinking that's going to be best for them in high school. When they ask themselves, do I belong? These are the questions they ask. Am I like people or unlike people? How can I meet new people? And how can I find my own groups? And what their research has clearly shown in high school is that just sitting in 6 periods a day for a student will not give them a sense of belonging, because they might go all day and not talk to anyone. And even if they knew kids from intermediate, those kids might be in a club, they might be in a sport, they might be in the visual and performing arts, or they might have some pathway or some special program like AVID or a CTE class that binds them together. Regular English or regular algebra is not going to give kids that sense of community. If you think about as an adult, what are the groups you feel commonalities with? It's because you've taken time to bond together, your family members, your friends. So students need those same experiences. And so that's why Dr. Heflin is going to be sharing with you information about the 8th grade visit and what to expect in high school. As you're hearing her, be thinking about beyond just the 6-period day. My child, I'm going to sit down with them and I'm going to say, and I tell this to my mentees, I've mentored 100 students that have graduated already, and I have 50 now at Los Amigos, and I've been with them since 6th grade. I force them, I tell them, you have to, and I did this with my same children. You're either going to be in a sport or you're going to be in a visual and performing arts. My son was in football, my daughter was in choir, also be in clubs. So you meet people, so you interact, so you feel that sense of belonging, and you're happy at school. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Heflin.
Thank you, Dr. Mafi. Next slide. Thank you. So the sense of belonging is a huge component, as Dr. Mafi has already spoken to, as you get into high school. In fact, I actually just left a professional development opportunity where I have a small group of teachers, administrators, and counselors from each of the 7 high schools who are meeting right now, planning for your 8th graders to join them soon over at the high schools. They're planning those events right now as we speak. So we take this very seriously. We start planning very early for all of the things that are to come for your current 8th graders, and we're very excited to have them join us. As Dr. Mafi alluded to earlier in the presentation, we do have a really exciting event coming up, and that's next week on Thursday, February 15th, and it is our annual 8th grade visit. And that is where all of our 8th graders get to go to their home high school to spend a few hours on the campus and see it all in action. And let me tell you, it is so exciting, the amount of energy that is happening during this time. There's nothing but excitement in the air, and the kids really do start to see what their futures could look like over the next 4 years and beyond. Our high school students take so much pride in this event. They've been planning this for quite some time to give the best bird's eye view, a little bit of a glimpse into what those days are going to look like for your 8th graders who will be there in just a few months. So they will be there next week. They'll get to take buses over with their peers to their home high schools. They're going to be greeted when they get off the bus. In fact, the picture that you see right now is an actual part of 8th grade visitation last year, and they're right there to visit and greet them as they come off the bus. It's from 9 to 11. And it really is a chance for your student to not only see classes, those 6 classes that Dr. Mafi was speaking about, but what else can we start to participate in? Because it's all of those extras, the clubs, participating in visual performing arts, athletics, and all the other opportunities in addition to those classes that not only give our students a chance to meet and get to know other people, but also adds to just them getting to know different activities and different subjects as well and become well-rounded. Because as we mentioned, there's a lot of different things to go ahead and look at when you get out of high school. And some of that we want to make sure we build upon. especially when we're starting to look at post-secondary careers, possibly in college and the university as well. Next slide. So we're going to go over a lot of little details, and it might feel a little quick, but you're going to hear this again because many of you have a 8th grade night coming up at your home high school soon, as well as your students are going to hear about it with their high school counselors, as they will be going to the intermediate schools over the next few weeks to meet with your students and talk about registration. And so we're going to talk a little bit, just a glimpse of what that day will look like, and you'll hear about it some more in detail as the different opportunities come up for you. But a structure of the high school day is a little bit different. Some of your students, they're going to be in 6 periods, but they will also possibly be in a 7-period day. And that's when we add what's called a 0 period. That starts at 7:30 in the morning, and it gives your students the opportunity to complete more classes during their school day. Oftentimes as freshmen, we see our 8th grader, or I'm sorry, our freshmen take 0 period when they might be in AVID or athletics. And so it's a time to go ahead and get a jump start on that. Our days start at 8:30. It's a little bit later than our intermediate schools. All high schools, that's a California state law. We cannot start any earlier than 8:30, with the exception of a period 0. When the class is labeled 0 period, it's okay to start prior, but period 1 will start at 8:30, and that'll be for a majority of your children. We do have our normal lunch period between 4th and 5th period. The kids are usually most excited freshman year because there's so many more lunch options than they may have seen at the intermediate school. So you're going to hear them talk about that. They get pretty excited about it. And what you might be used to at your intermediate schools is on most Wednesdays, your students have an early release on Wednesdays. At the high school, we actually have what's called late start Wednesdays, where your students will start school probably between 9 and 9:30, closer to 9:30. And depending on what high school you'll go to, you'll get more details on the exact start time. So those are some of the pieces that might be a little different for your structure of your day. The kids also go a little bit longer. They get dismissed between 3:05 and 3:20, depending on the high school. So don't be surprised in those first few months, your children are going to come home and they're going to be really tired. It's a much longer day when many of the students currently are getting out at around 2:15, 2:30. And it's just, there's a lot of action happening at high school. So it does take a little bit of an adjustment to get used to the high school schedule. Next slide. In high school, grades are so important because the grades count when you get there. For every grade, you get what's called credits, and you have to have a certain number of credits to graduate. And to get the 5 credits that we'll talk a little bit more about in a moment, you have to get a D or higher. But we always are aiming for a C or higher, because C or higher is what meets what's A through G. And we'll talk about that in a few slides as well. But grades count. One of the things we often see is when our children become students in high school, that sometimes the parents may not look at, say, Aries as often. They might be checking in not as many as grades, because maybe you have some younger children you're taking care of. You're looking and watching their grades. Monitoring their grades on Aries in high school is just as important as you're doing right now and at the intermediate school, to stay on top of where your kids are at, to see how they're progressing in their classes. So please don't let up on your students and checking those Aries on a pretty consistent basis. In high school, so that we can make sure those grades aren't falling below what we hope is a passing grade, C's or higher, that's the aim, is that we also have tons of intervention and tutoring opportunities before school, after school, and during lunch, not only from their current teachers, but from other teachers and our college tutors who come in to help support our students. The grading periods are a little bit different as well. So because the grades count, their final grades go onto a transcript. So you may have seen some transcripts before in intermediate right now. However, they will have a different transcript in high school, in which they oftentimes are required to turn in for certain colleges, universities. They'll take a look at those transcripts, and that's where they'll note all their grades and their credits. The transcript grading reports, we're very used to in intermediate getting those final report cards at the end of every quarter. Well, in high school, it's at the end of every semester. So it's about 18 weeks. That quarter mark is now considered a progress report. So those final grades that will go on the transcript will actually be the report cards they bring home, or what you see in Aries right before winter break, before the winter holidays. and what you see at the end of the school year. Those are the two grades you'll see on their transcript. So those are the ones that are really important to stay on top of and make sure that they're getting the help they need. Parent Square is also up and running at the high school. That does not change just because they're in high school. So not only will you be getting a lot of messages from your children's administration and counselors and teachers, but it's also a way for you to communicate with your child's teacher as well. So don't hesitate to reach out and connect with your children's teachers. Next slide. So there's two things we look at when we take a look at grades and transcripts. First of all, it's graduation requirements. The graduation requirements are the bare minimum you need in order to receive a high school diploma. So you'll see on the screen, these are our GGUSD minimum, our graduation requirements in which we ask all of our students who receive a diploma to complete. And you can see it goes down by subject area in the left-hand column. History, math, very similar to what they're experiencing right now. English, fine arts, applied arts. We still have physical education in high school. They have to take at least 2 years. Health. Starting next year, for all of our new ninth graders, we will have an ethnic studies course that will also be a graduation requirement for your students. So if you have an older student who's currently in high school or may have already graduated, they didn't have an ethnic studies graduation requirement. But per California state law, as well along with our Garden Grove Unified School District Board of Education, we have decided, well, state law says we have to do that, but we're starting a little earlier. We're starting next year, and our students who start their freshman year will take that ethnic studies class starting next year at some point in their 4-year career. So that's going to be a little different if you've had an older student come through the high school. And then, of course, electives. The electives are a wonderful opportunity for your students to get involved, including in classes they might find interest in through our CTE pathways, such as auto, business. We also have medical pathways, many more, depending on the school in which you're going to, as well as our visual and performing arts, choir, orchestra, marching band, art, ceramics, digital graphics. There's so many opportunities in which your students can definitely get involved and really expand their horizons and their interests, even within that 6 or 7 period day. So the total number of credits that students need to graduate is 220. And most of our students who graduate have more than 220 credits. So they usually have just enough. What will happen is your counselor, your future high school counselor, will actually meet with your students within the next few weeks and start that class selection process. And then when they start high school, they'll meet with their counselor to start what's called a 4-year plan. And they will set out the plan for your student, depending on the different subjects they're in, including AVID. We also didn't mention AVID, which is considered an elective, that they will go ahead and start planning on what their 4 years will look like and what courses they will take. Next slide. And then we have what we also, you know what, I didn't mark this as an A through G slide. It says UC and CSU entrance requirement. We also call that A through G. Our A through G requirements are listed here, and they do correspond with our graduation requirements. However, in order to meet those A through G requirements, that's what the colleges are looking for. Our University of California, our California State Universities, and a lot of our other private schools in our state as well. They're looking for C's or higher in the classes that are listed on this slide. And as you can see on the right-hand side, it'll say 1 or 2. That's the number of years students need to take in those subject areas in high school. And the ones that are a little faded, like the 4 in mathematics, the 3 in sciences, and the 3 in world language, that's a recommended amount of years, not required. And when we go through A through G, we really do highly recommend, if not sometimes require, some of our kids to finish out those sequences, particularly in the maths, sciences, and world language, because it gives them a little bit of a step ahead of other applicants to these UC and CSU systems. But this is the A through G requirements. Your students have been hearing about these already at intermediate from their current counselors. You've probably heard about them in some of the parent meetings that you've been attending, and we really talk about them constantly at the high school level. Their teachers, their counselors, and their administrators are always focused on not only how they're completing their graduation requirements, but their A through G requirements as well. Next slide. Actually, can you go back a slide for me, Maggie? One more thing I want to mention, if a student does not receive a C or higher in a class, we do give plenty of opportunity for the students to actually retake that class to what we call a validation of the grade. So for example, maybe I took geometry and I didn't do so well and I got a D. That doesn't take me off the track to being able to get to the university. I can take that class again in the summer. And if let's say I get a B the next time, that B will replace the D or F that was received earlier, and it will put me right back onto track for A through G. So if you have a student that might struggle, or maybe they had something happen, something got in the way of getting that C or higher in an A through G class, we do give quite a few opportunities for students to validate or retake that class throughout the future years they have left within our time together at high school. Next slide. The opportunities outside of the classroom at each of your high schools is vast, and I don't even have enough time to talk about all of them, but I'll give you a glimpse. Just some of the pictures you see right now really do show a lot of the things that our families and their children get to participate in. And there's so many. It gives your kids an opportunity to stay connected to your campus, to their peers, connect with adults, and meet so many other students who have similar interests. And the students who tend to stay connected to campus, as Dr. Mafi referred to earlier, they actually are going to most likely do much better in their classes as well. There's a sense of expectations when you're in there. So like for example, athletics, when you're athletics, you have to earn a 2.0 or higher to even participate in that sport. And that's often the requirement for a lot of other things that come out on campus too. The academics need to take place, but that goal too, all the other pieces, the motivation, the involvement, that's connected as well. So we have a variety of opportunities between our visual performing arts opportunities. We have clubs. Every school is going to have so many different clubs that your kids are going to see right away when they get off on the buses next week onto the high school campus, and it'll really spark some excitement in your children. Next slide. One of the things we often get asked about is athletics. We do field 25 different sports in our district, and we're really excited about that and with over 5,000 student athletes. And so many of you right now are probably going to have a student that some of you will have a child who wants to participate in their athletics programs. And experience is always like, can I? Dr. Mafi loves to talk about one of our students in one of our groups about how, and I've seen it myself as I was an administrator at the high school. If I didn't know how to swim. If I thought I had to know how to swim to participate in, say, water polo. And he would have probably done that if he knew he didn't need the experience. And that was some of the feedback we've been getting. We want to make sure kids know, that your children know, you don't have to have experience to play these sports. Sometimes you don't have the opportunity to participate and build that experience. That's what we have the different levels for at the high school. So it's not just a high level varsity sport for every team. We usually have a JV and oftentimes a freshman sophomore team. And the whole idea of that is so that kids can go ahead and build their experience and their knowledge and build the foundation they need to participate and do well in that sport. If your student is interested, all of our athletic directors do go to our intermediate schools at some point in the spring from the high schools, and they come in and they talk about our athletic programs and all of the upcoming events they have happening in the summer that they can go ahead and sign up for. So a lot of the camps. In order to play, they will give all the information, but one of the things is called clearance, and that's when the students have to have a physical to show that they are healthy to go out on the field or the court to go and play. And your athletic directors will give more information about that and opportunities that if you don't have access to be able to get a physical, we can direct you in a place that we can make sure your student can go see a doctor to get that physical taken care of. And I know that's often a question and a concern that comes up. We have a lot of resources to help everybody with that so that the student can be cleared to participate starting in summer. Because as it was mentioned earlier, if they're already participating in the summer, can you imagine how connected and what part of that team they're going to feel on that first day of school, because they've already met other students, upperclassmen, they know coaches and adults. What a great opportunity to participate in. Next slide. We have class registration mentioned earlier coming up, where our high school counselors will be at all of our intermediate schools, and they're going to sit down with your students and talk about the classes they're going to register for. Some of them will be they don't even need to really think about. It's going to be English. It's going to be one of their math classes. It's going to be probably biology, along with some physical education and other courses as well. But they're really going to talk to them about what are their interests? What are their elective choices? What are some things you want to be involved in? Are they already an avid? Are they interested in playing, they're just learning how to play an instrument, or maybe they've already been playing an instrument for some time. Those are the times to have those conversations and start filling out that registration form. That 8th grade visit next week is going to give quite the opportunity to all of your children to get an idea of what they might want to sign up for, not only for their classes, but for their electives as well. And if you have any questions, particularly about registration or how they choose their classes or anything about high school in general, this QR code, which we will show you again at the end of the presentation, you can go ahead and jot your question down there. And if we can't answer it, we'll go ahead and direct it to your child's next school, which would be the high school, and they'll make sure that they reach out and let you know the answer as well. But we're really excited about the next few weeks and the few months for your students as they start to get ready and excited to come to high school. And we can't wait to greet them. So thank you. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Dr. Mafi.
Wonderful. We have some questions, and before we close for today, I will put a link. I just made it to the PowerPoint so you can just have the access to it. And I know those of you who registered, we can also email it out to you. There are some questions that we will get to, but we still have more to talk about. So there were some great questions about and I think we are recording, so we will have an opportunity if you wanted to go over this with your child later on today or over a weekend and say, hey, let's talk through these issues together, because we definitely are here to help. So we will have an opportunity for questions in a little bit, but we have more to talk about. So those of you who have 8th graders, but you may have 7th or younger children as well, when we think about what can your child do now to prepare for high school, in addition to being aware of what high school is about and be thinking about what might I get involved with. You know, your child might naturally love to sing. My daughter loved to sing. She went into show choir. That created a huge sense of belonging for her, because sometimes, I don't know about you, but algebra might not motivate you to want to come to school every day. Maybe regular English or regular science, but singing in my class or practicing on the field with my friends or being involved with my AVID group and we're going on a field trip. Those types of things are the things that excite and motivate kids. So there are 3 things we would have you talk with your children about now. The first thing is acting like a scholar. And a lot of our younger students in elementary and intermediate don't really realize the importance of how they present themselves. And I know as parents, we tell our kids, dress well, do what you're supposed to do, interact with, with adults well. But sometimes at school, you're not there. So you don't always know. Our kids are so respectful. They're nice, but sometimes they're respectful, but they're sitting in class with their head down, or they're being real shy and quiet. And we want to teach our students how to look and act like scholars. The second piece is for them to continue to develop that motivation and grit. So believing in themselves and their ability to do it. I might not be able to do that yet, but I will be able to do it. And of course, part of that is that positive self-talk. Next slide. So some of the things that we ask students to do when they're at home, when they get home, this was a big issue with my older son. My goodness, you remember those days, and maybe you're experiencing it now. You get the paper at the bottom of the backpack and you're like, oh, this was due 3 weeks ago, or this was due 5 days ago. My son was so bright. Both of my older kids were in GATE, but my son was disorganized. We had to organize that kid. My daughter was a little bit more with the color-coded notes, right? So every day they should be going through their backpack, organizing their binders and papers, reading through and reviewing and putting away their notes and handouts every single day, Monday through Thursday. Getting all of their homework done, which includes studying for tests. And one of the key things, now I used to say when my kids were younger, was about watching TV. Now kids have devices. And so they like to spend, and I say spend time, but sometimes parents, we know it's wasting time, looking at every short little video. What are those reels, the little clips that they look at on Instagram or TikTok? And they could spend hours and hours wasting time not developing their brains. So homework first, before you use your phone, before you watch TV, before you stream the 12 episodes on Netflix that you want to watch. Obviously, they can eat when they get home. They shouldn't be listening to music unless it's like classical or something, because they need to keep focus on their schoolwork. Students try to multitask, but they really can't do it effectively. So we've got to have them have that focus time without the distractions of phones. Cell phones are great and make life easier, but they're terrible for us as parents because they're a big distraction to our children. They should be reading every single day, and most of your elementary and intermediate will assign that. Their books for their own pleasure and enjoyment, including on weekends. Practice makes perfect, 30 to 45 minutes a day. That's not just reading their homework, but reading a novel, reading a magazine, actually engaging in reading, practicing their writing. They can keep journals at home. They should be practicing their math facts still. Your older children in 7th, 8th grade say, I don't have math facts to learn. Yes, you do. You can learn the square numbers. You can learn the square roots. There's so many things you can memorize. You can memorize the different equations. And so giving them time with those math flashcards and then studying for tests. So one of the things that I found as a parent, but also mentoring 150 students over the course of the last 15 years as superintendent and assistant superintendent, is that the hardest thing about high school is going from just doing homework to homework is the bare minimum. If you only do your homework in high school, you'll get a C and maybe a D and maybe an F. You have to study for the test. So they have to realize homework plus studying for tests is what I need to do at home. And that's a big transition when they have 6 classes. They might have AP and honors classes as well. Next slide. So one of the things we talk to children about very often is a part of motivation is having that growth mindset. And this is something that we can model for our children at home. I'm guilty of showing a fixed mindset sometimes, and sometimes my daughter, who's a psychotherapist, who's 28, corrects me, Mom, you shouldn't talk about yourself that way, or Mom, you shouldn't do that. So for example, when we say messages and I would say them, oh, I'm not good at that. I'm not good at that yet. Or I'm not good at that because I haven't really tried, but if I tried, I could get better. We want students on the left side of this picture where they're realizing that anything worth learning is hard work. And at first, you're not going to do it well. It's going to take time to practice to make perfect. So if we think when our children were little, when they were little toddlers, infants and toddlers, and they're first learning to stand and they're first learning to walk. As they're learning to walk, how many times do they fall? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And every time they walk 2 steps or 1 step and fall, we go, oh, that's great. You did such a great job. We cheer them on. They get back up, even though they fell right on their bottom. They get back up and they start trying again. And eventually those children, all of our children are walking around, unless like my son who's wheelchair bound, but if they're able to physically walk, they're walking around. But it took that hard work and those mistakes along the way as they're growing and learning. And so one of the things we talk about at all of our elementary schools, intermediates, and high schools is this growth mindset. Learning that learning is hard work. I can learn, but those challenges are going to help me to grow. And I can't give up when things get hard. I have to persist. I have to show grit and motivation to continue to work hard. On the right-hand side is where people say, I'm just not smart, or I'm not good at math. And when we hear kids saying those messages, we have to address them. Well, you could be good at math, you just have to work a little harder. And what we know is those students on the banners, they weren't the kids who were the smartest kids, they were the kids who worked the hardest. When we see students put in sustained effort and hard work over time, they learn the subjects and they continue to improve. Same thing is true in athletics. The best athletes have to practice. They get knocked down, they have to get back up. You'll never see a successful athlete who's like, I'm sitting around eating candy all day, watching TV and resting. They go through such rigorous exercise. For our students in the visual and performing arts, they have to practice their violin. They have to sing regularly for them to master those performances. So we as adults can help them in 2 ways. One way is to ensure that they're showing that growth mindset and knowing. And you sharing with them too as an adult. My work is hard, but I enjoy it and it's challenging and it helps us to support our family, to have what we need to do. So we can talk to our students about the growth mindset, about that hard work is necessary in order to be successful. Next slide. Another challenge as students are going from 8th grade to 9th grade, it's a very difficult time. You remember it for yourself. I remember it for my children as well. Their bodies are changing. They're not little children anymore. There's so many pressures that I didn't face, and most of you did not face. Social media. You might have had social media when you were in high school. You as parents are probably a lot younger than I am, but you didn't have it the way they have it now. It's so negative. It's so unpleasant. There's people who are writing negative messages about other people and making fun of other people. So one of the things as parents, one of our responsibilities, and the school's responsibility as well, is to teach our children how to have positive self-talk, that the thoughts that they have about themselves can influence their beliefs and how they feel and what they do. So it's important for them to pep themselves up and to realize, maybe I didn't do as well on that math test, but I didn't study hard enough. So if I study harder, I will do better. And look at a positive outlook instead of a negative outlook. You can have a positive life when you have a negative mind. And granted, they're going to have challenges, and that's our job as parents and our job as a school district to help to support them. Next slide. Okay, so as you're thinking and planning for next year, what you're going to be receiving is a registration sheet when your child will bring it home, I think in the next few weeks, right, Dr. Hapland? Okay. So you'll be getting a little sheet of paper. Dr. Hapland, you want to tell them what it might look like?
Yeah, it's usually a one pager, and what it'll look like, it'll have the name of the high school on the top with your students' information. It'll have the classes that they've been already slotted for in terms of their course. So their English classes, their math, their biology class, their science class, world language. Well, they'll select their world language when they meet with their counselor. But then on the bottom, there's going to have a list of all the different elective classes or other interests they might have. So it could ask, are you planning to participate in athletics? Are you looking to want to get involved with art? Are you an avid student? And they'll start marking that. And they'll have a ranking system. And so each high school, it's usually the top 5. What are your top 5 choices for electives, with number 1 being the one you really, really want, all the way down to the 5th choice you have. And there's a variety. Now, some of them do have what may be a prerequisite, right? So let's say your student really wants to take ceramics. However, they're going to have to take Intro to Art first. So they may not see that ceramics class right away on the registration form, and the counselors will talk to them about that. They'll first start with that Intro to Art class so that in their sophomore or junior year, they could take that ceramics class. And that's what the counselors do with that registration sheet. They'll bring it back with them to after they meet with their counselors for you to look at, have a further discussion with your student, talk a little bit about maybe some of the things you learned today, or when you go to your 8th grade orientation at your high schools, of the things that you want to look at and focus on. Fill that out, and it'll have a spot for you to actually sign it. Then your student will take it back to the intermediate school, who will take those and give them back to the high schools. And so that will take place, and they'll start doing that right away and getting those courses. The other thing that they'll be doing is when they're on that 8th grade visitation, when they come back from that visit, they're going to have an opportunity to complete on their own little form of all the different things, like the clubs we talked about, athletics, things that they might have questions about. That form is for students that they will get on that day on the 15th, and they'll go ahead and fill that out so that if it doesn't ask it on that registration form, they'll have that opportunity to complete it after their visitation next Thursday. And then that way, the high schools can reach out directly to your students to give them more information about when a summer camp might be happening, when all of our high schools will have what's called freshmen, typically a bridge, summer bridge. Other schools have different titles. You'll get all that information. And so that's what that registration form looks like that they'll bring back in the next few weeks. And then your student will also be filling out an interest form after their visit to talk about all the things outside of those classes they'll register for.
So between now and when you turn that form in, starting today or this weekend, I'll see some of you at the TEP parade, but even after the TEP parade, it's done by noon. We would like for you to have the conversation with your child about, what do you see yourself doing? And they might need to think about it. They're going to look at the resources that they were provided at their high school visit. They're going to think about, for some of your children, they may have already played soccer, already played Little League, but they should look at the full course and think, am I more fast? Am I more strong? Do I want a more skill type of thing? And also understanding at the school, which are the entry level ones if I haven't been involved in sports. Every single student, even students in a wheelchair, can be involved in a sport on campus, every single child. And they just need to find one that they enjoy, that they would like. It doesn't mean they have to be the star. Being on the team is so important. My son played football for 4 years. He played in a few games, not that many, but he loved being on the team. He loved weightlifting. He loved practicing with his friends, and he made friends for life. My daughter was in show choir. She didn't always get a solo. She did get a few solos in senior year, but the first 3 years, no. But she loved being in it. It's not about them being the best or the star player or the best artist. It's about them bonding with other kids who have the same interests and having other eyes on them, their coaches, their advisors that are going to be looking and supporting them. And it also is that motivation for that child, that's your child, that student, to want to come to school. Oh my goodness, I'm in the play next week. I'm so excited and energized about it. And if you think about your life at work, obviously, we are energized by the work we do, but it's also by the relationships we have and the interactions. Dr. Heflin and I are on the same floor, and we talk about things, and we have fun, and we laugh, and you do that with your coworkers as well. They don't have the opportunity. During a class, they're all about learning. They're not sitting chit-chatting with their partners. So this is the time for them to bond. And so I would ask you to have your child commit a sport or a visual and performing arts and a club. Now, the club rush happens, as Dr. Heflin said, once the school year starts. So they have some time to think about what club would they want to join. But a little hint for you is that when college applications come, they're going to want to see not that just they were in clubs or in sports or in visual and performing arts, but they had leadership roles. So being in 3 clubs is not as important as being the president of 1 club. And so that won't happen freshman year, but they're going to work up to that. So we've given a lot of information, and we're going to, let's go to the next slide. We have 2 resources for you that we want to provide you with QR codes. So if you hold up your phone, you can take a photo of each. The first one is for further questions you have about high school. And I believe, Dr. Heflin, there's a space there they can put their email or a phone number if they want to be. So if you have a specific information about your child, this is the place right now. Scan that, enter the information, just save it on your phone so that if you have any questions, that's going to come straight to the district office. We're, as a parent also, I want to be able to answer those questions that you have. We want all of our children to be successful. And it is navigating high school is a lot different than elementary and intermediate. It doesn't have to be hard, but we all want to help each other. So that first QR code is to scan for whatever questions, and we'll be looking at that and responding back. The second,
actually, Dr. Mafi, if you don't mind, on that first QR code too, if we don't respond right away, it might have been because we pushed that question to the future high school as well to get more information, because we want to either connect. If we can't answer it at the district, we want to make sure you get the most accurate question answer from their incoming high or their upcoming high school. So, just give us a little time.
And I should clarify, like, give us a week to answer, because we do have our regular jobs. We just added this on top of it, but we're happy to answer your questions. But I am going to be at 10 events morning, noon, and night until next week. So we won't necessarily answer right away, but it will be answered. The second QR code is our family resource centers. Our family resource centers in each of the trustee areas. So nearby to most of the high schools, we have a family resource center where you can call. The number is there, the email. They have workshops there. They have supports for you if you have any questions or needs. They have liaisons there in all of the primary languages that can speak to parents with any questions or concerns they have. So that's another resource there for you. And we're going to leave those up for a little bit while we take some questions, even though I have a slide that says questions. So I'm going to start out. I already had seen a question earlier that had asked about whether we participate with our local community colleges for students to take coursework. Yes, students can take coursework formally and informally at the community college while they're in high school. So in just a minute, Dr. Heflin will tell you we have 2 exciting programs at 2 of our high schools where we actually have students earn 2 years of college credit by the time they graduate high school. But in addition, we have individual classes that students can take that earn college credit, and students can also go in the summer and at other times and take community college classes. So Dr. Heflin, you want to tell them about the ECA programs?
Absolutely. ECA, or Early College Academy. We have two of our high schools that actually offer this. It's called that would be Los Amigos High School and Santiago High School. Santiago works closely with Santa Ana College, while we partner with Golden West College at Los Amigos. And what happens is students can apply for this program, and applications will be going out very soon. They'll learn all about it and hear about the application process next week at their 8th grade visit, as well as an upcoming, they'll start pushing out messages if you haven't gotten one already to our incoming 8th grade families. And students apply for this opportunity. And what happens is every year, they get an extra opportunity to take up to 2 to 3, maybe even 4 semester courses connected with the community college that they take in connection with a current high school class. So for example, they might be taking a literature course at the high school, so English, maybe English 3, and it will be connected to a college course, say a literature course, and they'll be taking it concurrently. So part of the class is taught by their either Santiago or Los Amigos teacher, and the other bulk of it will be taught by a college professor during their class time. And they're earning graduation credits at the high school, as well as college credits at the local community college. And by the time they work their way through all 4 years, they could earn up to potentially 50 to 60 units at the community college that can transfer also into the university. And so those programs are offered at our 2 schools. And we get to work very closely with the community college. They start working with them immediately in 9th grade. It starts out freshman year, fall semester, right out the gate in August. And they are part of those college classes, about 2 every semester, as they work their way through the 4 years. And so it's a great opportunity to start getting ahead in those college units.
So another question is, my child is in special ed. All of this information is very useful to you and your child, depending on what level they're in special education. So we have students who are considered resource students. Those students would primarily be on the A through G track that Dr. Heflin spoke about, going straight to a 4-year university. We also have students who are considered mild moderate that might have more significant learning delays or issues. And those students will also be receiving a diploma. They can also go on, typically might be more to a community college to begin with and then transfer, but they do need to receive their high school diploma. There's a small group of students, about 11% of the students in our district, that would be considered moderate to severe. That's like my own youngest child I told you about, Gabriel. Gabriel doesn't walk, he doesn't talk, he's on a ventilator, and he has profound medical difficulties. So he doesn't take algebra, and he doesn't read, and he doesn't talk. He would be like in the group of students that go to our programs till they're 21. They don't actually get a diploma because they are supported through regional center and through other services within the community. So yes, all of this information is relative to special ed. If your student is an MS student, moderate to severe, like my son Gabriel, who's nonverbal, non-mobile, then that child would have a little different pathway and be in programs with us till they're 21. Another question that I see on here is requesting for a transfer. So Nicole, yes, Nicole, the link is there. We do have the transfer window. Do not wait until registration to look at a transfer. The transfer window will close on February 12th. So if your child is scheduled to go, you still want them to go to the visit to their home school, wherever it's going to be for high school. But let's say their high school is Garden Grove High School, but you want them to go to Santiago. Then you would put a transfer now, prior to February 12th. You don't have to come to the district office. All you have to do is simply click on the link that I put. It's under the answered questions under Nicole. And then you would just put your application in, and then you will be informed of the timeline. It takes a few months because we have to process. People do move around to schools because they've been in another school and they stay, in that same feeder pattern. How many electives do freshmen generally take, Dr. Heflin?
That really depends on the schedule. It could be, and usually our students, our freshman year, they do take physical education. So that usually takes one of the slots out of that core. So we're looking at usually 1 to 2, depending on it's a 6 or 7 period day.
And as students go through the levels, freshmen, you typically have the fewest because you're kind of getting started, more electives as they go through the high school program. Someone, Anonymous, has asked, where or who may I contact for classes and scheduled offered over the summer. The summer program schedule, if your child is eligible for summer school, you will receive that information from the home school. If it is like a sports camp or something like that, that information will come from the high school, and that would be something coming out from the high school your child's going to attend. But some summer programs are scheduled at each school and in the area based on children's needs. We also have, for the third year this time, for students in grades TK through 8, our extended learning program. So let's say your child's not eligible for summer school, they're at or above level, but we do have opportunities for children to come in and do enrichment and other programs during the summer. That link just went out a few days ago. And so look for that in your parent square so that you can express your interest if you're interested. Mr. Vu also, he's asked another good question. For the ECA program, the students do have to be enrolled at that school because it's during the school day. So a student at a high school can't go back and forth to different high schools. If you're interested in that program for your child would want to transfer in. And that transfer could be contingent upon them getting into the program. So you might want to use that first QR code, and then we can get back to you with more details.
Mm-hmm.
The NJRTC class at Pacifica is considered elective, but I believe that it also counts for PE credit, Dr. Heflin.
Yes, that's correct.
So that, and our NJRTC program and the RTC program, the JRTC program at Santiago are great programs. Are there college classes available at Pacifica as well? So the college courses that are offered that are dual enrollment are the classes on campus. Those are offered, and each high school will share that with you at the 9th grade orientation. It's the 2 high schools that have the ECA program, and that program isn't something we fund. That's based on the community colleges, and they pick the schools, and they pick the schools based on the federal and state guidelines. So, but students at all of our high schools can take community college classes. Students can take AP classes as early as 9th grade with AP human geography. Most of the AP classes, the biggest load of AP classes are usually taken in 11th and 12th grade. You really don't want your child taking 5 AP classes in freshman year. Freshman year is challenging enough, but we do offer a wide variety of AP classes. Okay, I think
there's one. I think there are ethnic studies 5 credits. Somebody's asked. Yeah, ethnic studies is 5 credits. That means it's only 1 semester. It's 1 semester. So we do have a variety of semester courses. And so if a student were to take ethnic studies in their during the school year, of course they would. It would be the 5 credits, and then it would back up to another semester course, such as health.
And Ms. Silva, I know you, Ms. Silva. The ECA, we did have an orientation at Los Amigos, and so they can provide you more specific information, but the ECA does allow for AVID. It's not going to allow for every single elective that a child might take. It's very specified in terms of the sequence because they are all on the same pathway. I did see another one that was in Spanish that I want to answer because I do speak Spanish. So if your son or daughter, in this case, Ms. Canul or Mr. Canul, is in another district. If you have a child on transfer into Garden Grove and you're renewing that transfer, your child can remain in Garden Grove while you're waiting for the district to release them. Sometimes the districts take a little while. Don't worry about that. We will keep the child with us if it's a continuing student. So let's say they're in 8th grade now and going to 9th, and you write to Anaheim Union. They're kind of bad about this. And they're like, well, we don't know if we're going to release them. You can appeal to the County Department of Ed if they don't release them, and we will keep your child in our schools. I'm a mom, and I don't believe it's right for a kid to have to move schools from 8th to 9th grade or from 6th to 7th grade just because you moved out of a different district. If we had a family that lived in, let's say, Cypress, and then moved into our district in 8th grade, I would say, no, you have to come here. You can't stay with your friends. So if you have a transfer issue, we did put the link there, and there is a phone number. Please contact with any transfer issues. I think we're getting one translated here. Oh, maybe it was answered already. translators, there's one in Vietnamese, and unfortunately, while I do read Spanish, I don't read Vietnamese. So I don't know how to answer that question. Oh, it's coming in. Oh, yes. So the link to register, ask questions, and fill out the registration card. So registration is going to happen automatically if your child is a current student. If your child is not a current student, that link, and I can put it in here right again. I'll put it in the chat to everyone. This is where you would go for transfers, and you can also ask questions there about registration as well. Of course, your child's current school is the best place to ask those questions where they're currently attending. I'm looking to see, do we have any more? We went a little bit over time, and I do have to go to my next TED event at Skylark Preschool. So tonight we're going to be doing this again. Dr. Heflin and I are taking our show on the road at 6 p.m. And so if you know someone, or if you want to watch again with your child, we may have a recording of this. It's not going to be available right away, but it will be on the website, so you can look for that. You can also use the any questions you might have that we weren't able to answer. You can use the QR code for high school, but if it's specific, general to the district, you might want to use the family resource. I want to tell you on behalf of our Board of Education and all of our district staff, how proud we are of your children. Garden Grove Unified School District children performed the best. We're above the county average, Orange County average, above the state average, and your children not only do well academically, but they're some of the nicest, best citizens I have ever interacted with in my life. I've been in this district for 22 years, came here as an elementary principal, and I could not be more delighted with the caliber of students that we have in this district. And that's thanks to your parenting, the wonderful parenting that you've done to raise wonderful children who are respectful, who are kind, who are eager to learn. So we're happy to work with you together as partners for your children to have that lifelong success. And in 4 years, if you have 8th graders, you might see your child on that banner. And that's something to look forward and work towards with them. So have a wonderful rest of your day. And we'll be on this call again, or this Zoom again at 6 p.m. with the same presentation.